What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to our real estate and construction YouTube channel down here in the beautiful state of Texas. And today we have a wonderful guest from Dallas, Texas. We have Justin Radcliffe. How you doing today, Justin?
Doing great. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I know that this is in the works for a little bit, so it's a pleasure to have you on. I'm excited for our conversation today.
Thank you. I'm excited as well. Hope we could discuss some good things about the world.
There you go. That's the idea. But yeah, Justin. So for those of us who aren't too familiar with you, would you introduce yourself, please?
Yeah. So my name is Justin. I'm a local investor out of DFW, which is Dallas, Texas. Been investing for about 3 years now, and just looking to grow and do more, and also assist and help others.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm curious about your background as well. Are you from the Dallas area or?
No. So I guess, like I said, so I grew up in Boston, and I've been there since I was about 13, 14. And then I moved to Dallas. My parents wanted to live somewhere warmer, and that's why we came. But previous to that, she was the first way I learned about real estate. She actually bought a triplex, and she bought a triplex when she, I don't know her age. What was she then? I'd say she was about 40 years old. So her husband's brothers, which is my uncles, was telling her about real estate, and my dad was too scared to jump in. So she kept my brother-in-laws, actually no, my uncles kept telling my mom to invest in real estate, So she got started with that one triplex, and that's my start of my real estate career.
Yeah. No, I always find it so interesting. There's always some sort of person or a spark that kind of gets you that interest in the business.
Yeah, and I was only 6. So her introduction has opened me to the riches of real estate.
Yeah.
Freedom it provides for everybody.
Yeah, no, I love it. I always think that's so cool. I always think the husband-wife team is so cool. And I always think it's really neat when you hear someone kind of having, a good impression of the business when they're, very young and impressionable and they grow into it.
Yeah, and it was actually very important because she sold it and she made about like 110. And then she used that for basically buying her new house over here in Texas. So back then, prices were real low, but that just amplified her. So you get tax-free money just for owning it and taking care of it while the tenants pay down your mortgage is brilliant. I just wish more people knew about it, which I think they do now. Real estate has blown up. But yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think you'd mentioned it before, but how old, when did you first move to Texas? How old were you?
So I was 14 when I moved. So I stayed here up until 2017. So I guess you'd say, how many years is that? 2006 from 2017. I stayed 11 years, which 14 to 25. And then I moved to Florida, West Palm Beach, for a job, a corporate job, a W-2 job. Then I came back, and now I'm here. But the reason I moved to Florida is because I was working, and I was getting frustrated sitting in the cubicle, squared off, boxed off from the world. And then I started researching financial freedom, FIRE. I don't know if you know about got his name, I can't name it, but he just did a show, Making Sense, on Netflix, the documentary. Money Mustache.
Okay.
Yeah, Money Mustache. So I got introduced to him and the 4% rule, that if you have $1 million in your portfolio and you would draw 4% a year, that's like 40,000, and you can live off of that. But that was back then. Now inflation took it all.
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind, could you kind of talk about that? You said the 4% rule, right?
Yeah. So when I was reading it, there's so many forms on it. So basically, he said if your portfolio, if you kept for until you're probably like 25 to 60, If you invest in your 401k, a Roth IRA, and you can have $1 million in portfolio by the time you're that age. So that's the old way of thinking, because now in real estate, you can retire in 2 years. So you'd put that, you'd have that million at age 60 or 65 in your portfolio. And then each year you can withdraw 4% of that. And that's what your stock keep like growing at 8% difference. So you take 4% out of that, and then eventually you probably run out of money at like age 16 years after that, probably 81, 82. But who knows if you be living by then. But that was his method. Every year you take 4% and you can live off maybe 48,000, 52,000, just going forward, and your stock will just keep going down. But you're living without having to work. He said, just so rather than doing that, you can just invest early to get to that $1 million portfolio. I think that's one of the main reasons why I started investing in real estate. It was mainly to have enough income and cash flow coming in so you don't have to work. So with that job, I flew over here to Texas simply because the real estate here is cheaper. In Florida's prices were high and hurricanes come and destroy your property, and this is insurance. But I'm loving it so far here in DFW.
Yeah, absolutely. No, and it's neat that you also have that perspective, being from another place, living in another place, right? So Boston and then Florida. And I'm curious as well, when you originally came from the East Coast down to Texas, could you maybe describe that transition and what that was like, maybe some things that were a bit different about living in Texas?
Yeah. So I'd say I was very young. So, I mean, everybody has their different things that they focus on when they're young. To me, it was nature. I mean, still is nature. So I mostly noticed over here in Dallas, you have a lot of open land. You'd see like the haystacks, you see horses. It wasn't like that when I came, but I still seen horses and all that. So the transition, I'd say I was about in sixth, seventh grade. So just getting new friends, and being comfortable in the school that you're at. But to me, it was a smooth transition. I loved the warmer weather rather than the cold. And when you're around that age, going to like sixth, seventh grade, your circle of friends that you grew up with, you practically don't even remember them because you were so young. So that was one of the transitions coming to Texas and how I felt.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I can definitely, I can definitely see how that would be an interesting transition. And I'm curious as well, you came to Dallas and of course you went to Florida, but you returned back to Dallas. So I'm curious, what's special to you about living in Dallas compared to maybe Houston, Austin, or San Antonio?
Yeah, we always had that rivalry.
Yeah.
You're from Houston, right?
I'm originally from Corpus, but I live in Houston.
So yeah, so you have Dallas, you have Corpus, you have Houston, you have Austin. Out of all of them, which one would you say would be the best for you?
Yeah, it's tough because I guess I don't know how can I explain it. It seems like each major city in Texas kind of has its own personality.
Yeah.
I would say I guess to me it kind of seems like in a way Dallas Fort Worth is it's Texan, but it's also in a way kind of Midwestern, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah,
Where
because we have Fort Worth. Yeah.
yeah, you know what I mean?
Yeah. So for me, I find Dallas more of a relaxed family environment. You go a little bit more Fort Worth, you get like even more of a family environment. And then the way I think of Austin is more weird. People say it's weird. They're different. They're trying more liberal. And then San Antonio is more like I feel like it's an olden, retired place that people go there when they're so young. I mean, when they're a lot older. That's what you notice in the streets when I went. And then Houston, I feel like it's wild. You have more diversity, more people.
Yeah.
But I like Dallas because of that reason. It's not too far from the other main hubs in Texas, and I feel like it's one of not cheaper than Corpus Christi, but it's one of the suburbs that have a good quality of life that I think about.
Sure, definitely. No, of course, we have rents going up and the housing shortage and price of lumber. So there's a lot going on. But at the end of the day, the major metros, all the big cities in Texas, they definitely have a lot to offer.
Yeah. Yeah. If I were to start over again, I'd no, I'd still stay in Dallas. Because I have a buddy of mine, he tells me to invest in Corpus Christi. He says he's getting these deals at like 50%, 50% on the dollar. And it's just that it's so the values are lower out there, and there's not many people, so there's not that much demand for the housing there. But I think I'd probably go to Corpus Christi next as another town to invest in.
Okay. Is that just it being more affordable, or what do you like about Corpus Christi?
No, it's just that what you get over here in Dallas, you get a oversaturated market, um, a lot of activity, but there's a lot of demand, so that makes up for it. But over here, I feel like it's so many people has marketed to every single person inside a household over here, even though about 70% of the data of the households never show up when you do the data or the skip trace. It's just that I feel like it's oversaturated. Like 5-10 people call my mom each day. Hey, I see your house is like paid off. Are you willing to issue to selling it? I mean, the good data that they're getting, but it's like she's annoyed with that. So I feel like there's a lot of people marketing, but I'd rather just buy from wholesalers than go and do my marketing myself.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting distinction too. Maybe you're, whether it's, flipping or, building or developing or whatever it is, why would you rather work with a wholesaler than work directly with the seller?
Yeah, the value that they add is worth their fee. So for instance, there was one deal, a person got it for about like 55,000 and they sold it to me for 120. So I mean, they made a good 70 on that. And it was just like a cheap little, it was almost a tear down type house. And I ended up rehabbing it. The area was good. But it's just the spread they make and the spread I make. If I'm okay with making this amount of money, I don't care how much you make. I've seen a lot of people make so much. Even I made a lot of money on assignments. It's just, it is what it is. The value that they add is so immensible. If I'm able to make money, you're able to make money, the seller's able to make money, and we all have a solution and we all get to move forward and everybody's happy, I think that's great. And the thing about when I buy it, I feed families, I feed contractors, title companies get paid. Just so many people are involved with that transaction. So their value, I believe their value is almost a need within the real estate business, even though plenty of states are trying to make that a law that the wholesalers shouldn't be, or wholesalers must be licensed. But yeah.
Yeah, no, and I'm curious on that as well. What do you think of that? Do you think that Texas should do something like that, making wholesalers have a license, or keep
No, I don't think so at all. Because it's, for instance, it's you plugging people together. Let's say you knew, let's say you had a farm, but you didn't know what to do with it or any props to plant in your farm. And then you spoke to somebody else, which is a supplier. They're like, hey, you can plant tomatoes, plant corn, and you can buy it directly from me. So I don't, you wouldn't care where the supplier gets all those tomatoes, all those seeds from, because you're buying directly from them. And they sell you at that markup, and it's like, okay, now you're able to run your own farm and produce from your harvest. So produce from your harvest is a reward of your work. So you get your reward, and the supplier got the reward for finding you tomato seeds, fruits, and all that. So I feel like that's a very good part of the business. It's in every business. But suppliers do have laws that they have to stick to. But I feel like real estate is so common, and mostly everybody has a house. So it doesn't need to be that regulated. So I feel like they're very important.
Yeah, no, and it's one of those things as well. It's kind of, hey, if I have this property to sell, I want to sell my house. I can do for sale by owner, I can sell it myself as opposed to paying a realtor, right? So it's kind of one of those things where maybe technically you could work directly with somebody, but there's a reason maybe that you pay someone for their time.
Yeah. So primarily right now, but were you about to ask something?
No, I mean, I just thought it was a really interesting example that you offered, kind of about, owning the farm, and then, you didn't know what to do with it. Maybe, you have these seeds, you have the crops, and that was a really great comparison.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
And not only that, so let's say there were so many people like you that had so many farms because you lived in an open area, maybe in Dakota, North Dakota, South Dakota, Arkansas, wherever they have farms. Let's just say that there were so many people like you that wanted to do something with their farm, which there is. There's so many buyers out there, and there's so many suppliers out there. But the thing is like some suppliers will give you something at a lower rate because they think you can't produce that much from it. So for instance, if I take that because this is what I'm talking about. So if you buy tear down houses in South Dallas, they're selling at maybe $80,000, $90,000, sometimes 65. And you buy a lot for 40,000 in the same area. The ARV of that $75,000 house that they just sent you probably about like 150. It's almost a tear down, so you redo everything. So you're at least 50, 60K in. If you do like 65 plus 60, yeah, 112. Let's say ARV is 150 minus realtor fees and holding costs, you probably make 25,000 from it. So some people shy away from just making 25,000, but if you look at it from the opportunity that you could knock that house down and then build a brand new one and have less money into the deal, it makes more sense than the $40,000 lot that's just blank with nothing on it that you get permits on and all that. I say that to say this. I feel tear downs have been like a small niche that has been avoided within real estate. I feel like that's where I'm making my bread and butter in real estate compared to just lots.
Yeah, absolutely, Justin. And that's interesting as well. Why do you think that maybe it's a smaller, maybe not untapped niche, but is it because, the demolition is dirty, it requires more money, or kind of what's the reason why more people don't do it?
It's just that most people, if we were in let's run a quick comparison. So if I've been talking to conventional lenders when it comes to building a house, it varies, but not much. So let's say you bought a lot for 40,000, and let's say the house was worth 300,000. Most of the time they say, "Oh, I'll give you 90% loan to cost," which is, let's say your loan to cost on that for 7% of that value was, let's say 100, for example. They would give you a loan to cost of 90,000, but your loan to cost includes the rehab, includes all that. So you end up putting 10,000 on that 100,000.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say now you buy a tear down, and that tear down, you buy it. We're using the same example for 100,000. You buy that tear down for 20,000, and you have a rehab of maybe 60,000. So with that, you're at 80,000 total. But with that loan to cost, you have to bring in 10,000. But with in the other scenario, there's so many ways that you can manipulate that structure, the financing structure, in order to buy that house with less cash out of your pocket than the person who did it loan to cost. So I feel like loan to cost is a way that the lenders have less money into the deal, but with hard money and you get 7% of your ARV up front, well, not really up front, but you're able to do so much more. You have less requirements, less documents, and it's a much easier process than going through conventional lending. So that's why I do tear downs. Most lenders think I'm doing a fix and flip, but sometimes I just do a tear down and I build it brand new. I did have an issue with one lender just recently. They was like, "Oh, I didn't know you were doing a new build." I mean, you're still getting your monthly mortgage payment. this and that. So I had to refinance out of them because they're requiring me to do things that typically hard money lenders don't. But typically when it comes to that, I would think a lender would want a better product. So if I'm building a brand new house at the same cost as doing a fix and flip, you have more bang for your buck in case you have to default on me or take the house. But I guess that's too much risk for them. But I feel that tear down and rebuild is better than doing lots that you buy at retail price and then you put build costs.
Absolutely. And I'm assuming that, amongst all that, you're also utilizing your wholesalers, right? That you're kind of talking about.
Yeah, but I actually learned it from a mentor of mine. He mentioned that he broke it down to me, and at first I didn't get it. I didn't understand why would you spend like extra 10, 15,000 to demolish a house and rebuild. Your all-in cost is more. I didn't understand it at first, but it made sense because now you're less money out of the deal, and it's an easier process. I utilize my relationships. If I didn't know that guy, my mentor, I wouldn't have been able to even think of an idea like this to make hundreds and thousands of dollars from doing fix and flips and basically doing them as new builds. So I think in real estate, your relationships and your overall communication with all your contacts, the lenders, the contractors, friends, other investors are very important, as well as wholesalers, because each and every one of them bring value to real estate. There's not one of we need them all. We need investors, we need wholesalers, we need people to sell their house or sell their deals. We need title companies, we need contractors to actually fulfill the work and give a good product to the world. So I feel like each and every single role that you have in real estate is needed to keep it going.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I guess it seems like a big theme for the show here is kind of that collaboration, right? You kind of talked about when you're doing a deal, you're able to give a contractor a job, he can feed his family, the title company is taken care of, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm
Oh,
yeah.
good.
Yeah, no, I'm curious as well. You kind of talked about a bit about loan to cost, a bit of the financial stuff as well. Could you also maybe talk about what to look for, for a good lender to do
Yeah.
construction with?
So yeah, there's a lot of lenders that, I mean, when they promote, they make it sound so great, but there's calculators out there that some lenders will say, oh, I'll do 90% loan to cost. So if you say your rehab is I don't want to use a lot of different numbers, or confuse people.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah, so if your loan to cost is 95%, you're paying 5% of that loan to cost. So if your loan to cost was 100,000, and you're paying 90% on LCC, you're bringing 10,000 just on that, and that doesn't include title fees or points or closing costs. You're just bringing that just for that loan. So then now you compare it to a same deal that, hey, you're getting at 70% of LTV. Let's say the value is 100,000. They give 70%, but let's say you got the deal at 50 and you have 20 for rehab. You're basically only in the closing costs, the taxes, and title fees. Rather than the other end, you have a payment for the part of the purchase of the rehab, which that's what I think is like a ruiner. You're bringing more cash to close, which at the back end you get a higher ROI because you have more cash in, and basically you have more cash in, so your loan amount is lower, so it looks larger on the HUD statement. So in that case, you brought 10,000 plus title fees, closing costs, and in the other case, you brought just title fees and closing costs. So in that scenario, you save 10,000. Although your monthly interest is a bit more, but doesn't matter too much to me. But yeah.
Yeah, no, and that's a great example of, using, those construction funds, right? Because each lender is different. And obviously, as you're saying, sometimes it's advertised one way and then later you find out, hey, it's a bit different, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And so that is a strategy. I mean, if you're an analytical person, you'd probably figure that out. But everybody has a different scope on how they invest in real estate. Some would rather put in more money on the deal. Some would rather put in less. And it all depends on the lenders that you work with. So usually, there's a lot of hard money lenders that have different ratios on the loan to cost (LTV). But typically, I like the ones that just do 75% LTV and nothing has to do with no 10% down or any of that. That would be something to look for if you're just starting off in real estate. There's quite a good few lenders out there, and all of them operate differently. Some of them are even able to roll in interest in the loan, which is very good.
Sure. And I guess for you, do you prefer to work with people in the Dallas Fort Worth Metroplex or other parts of the country, or does it really matter if you're choosing?
Yeah, it doesn't really matter. I have a partner in Atlanta. He does new construction over there. I typically fly down there sometimes. Nothing currently, but I would nothing other than just building. But I would like to. I'm looking to invest in like mobile home parks and self storages. I feel like that's another new niche that I want to get into. Because I feel I've made my money new builds and flips. I've been doing about like 12, 10 flips a year. And after a while, you're just burned out. You're driving here, you're driving there, you're driving to Home Depot. Sometimes I go to Home Depot 3 times in one day. But even though my contractors go, but sooner or later, sometimes it's something very small, go knock it out yourself. But yeah.
Yeah, I can see how that grinds you down. I mean, especially, you're not just going once or twice, you're going 3 times a day,
Gas strips. I mean, even though it's a write-off, but
yeah. Yeah, it's your time though. And I'm curious as well, you talked a bit about the financing side, also, dealing with wholesalers, you being comfortable, paying that fee for the convenience and the service. I'm curious as well, also, about taxes and insurance. Have you ever seen a deal where maybe there's some sort of tax issue or insurance cost would bust a deal?
Yeah, what I was talking about earlier, there's one deal I closed on January of 2022 this year. It was a horrible deal. I mean, my price was good. The price I got it for was good, but it's horrible because the seller who sold it to me, and wholesale, there's a lot of wholesalers in there as well. There was about 3 or 4 wholesalers. The original person who wrote the contract wasn't the original owner of the house. So basically somebody fraudulently sold somebody else's house and I was at the end and I bought it. Unfortunately with that, so I had a lender and everything set up. They ended up paying out my mortgage, my owner's policy, but they didn't pay me out. So I was stuck there with a loan. I mean, I was stuck there with like my costs, my rehab costs, as well as my closing costs, just out of money. But currently, I have a lawsuit with them. There's so many things going wrong with that transaction. If you look back, because last year, I owned the house January 14th of 2022. So from last year, there was about $2,000 worth of taxes. And I even have a bill right here for their, for the past due taxes. And I didn't own the house in 2021. So why would I pay for another person's property tax unless that was agreed upon? So on the HUD statement, they didn't even add that. And now there's so many things that they're missing. They were missing. They didn't even look at the deed. You could tell the deed was forged now when I look back at the title work. So if you're investing, there's a little issues like that. If you notice taxes are not on your HUD statement, you could see that the title work on that policy, on that house was horrible. As well as it was during the holidays. So they sent me the lead December 20th. They wanted me to close December 27th, which I could have, but then they pushed it back to January 4th. So around that time it's New Year's, it's Christmas. Hanukkah around that time as well. So everybody at the title office was basically on a break. So somehow everybody just kept on pushing it forward. I guess because they were out with their family and not caring, and they let a bad file go through that should have never been closed. They should have never allowed me to close on it. Now the original owner of the house is wanting me to give her the house back, but I'm out of cost. She doesn't want to pay the past due taxes, which is her responsibility. There's plenty of issues. Now she's trying to sue me, trying to get her house back, which is rightfully hers. But I'm an injured party inside this transaction as well.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I can see how that can that can be a real, a real tough situation there.
Yeah. But you live and you learn. I guess you invest and then you hope for the best with your mitigated risk that you can mitigate. But I'm happy I learned that lesson. I guess you got to do your own title work too as an investor. You always have to double check.
Sure. So I guess the big lesson is, doing your own title work, you said, and then also you mentioned how the taxes are not on the HUD statement at closing, right?
Yeah. So like, I guess if you notice any red flags, let's say usually title companies, they have a lot of different subcharges. In Texas, you have to charge, everybody charges the same amount for policies, but they have a lot of different escrow fee charges, different insurance, tax certificates that they probably never even utilized. Because on that transaction, there was a tax certificate fee, but there wasn't property taxes broken down in that. So there's plenty of things that you need to check out for on the HUD statement.
Sure. No, absolutely. It's definitely, definitely crucial to be able to check that HUD statement. And I'm curious as well, what types of insurance would you generally use for these flips or these new builds?
Yeah, so I typically use builder's risk policies. On my other, so I buy a few properties that are not like in tear down condition, that actually like rentable. And when I buy those, I usually get a landlord policy. I typically always go through a broker. Are you a broker as well, right?
I am, yeah.
Wow, nice. Can you tell me more about your services? Because I have a property that I also need to insure as well.
No, absolutely. No worries. So I guess really to piggyback with what you're saying, if you're doing a flip or a new construction build, right? So if you're building a single family home, a condo, a duplex, we would write a builder's risk policy for that.
Mhm.
And then, if you're going to rent it out, right? So if it's not occupied by you, if it's not your primary residence, you're going to rent it out, it would be a landlord policy, like you're saying.
Yeah. And do you guys do a vacant building policy insurance? I know it's a bit different than a builder's risk policy.
Yeah, slightly different, but yes, yeah, we can do vacant as well.
Are those typically more expensive than the builder's risk policies?
Yes, generally, because I guess at the end of the day, your insurance company, they're wanting to, mitigate their own risk, right? So I guess the idea is if no one's living in there, it's kind of like, hey, who's going to look after it? Something could happen, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But no, I'm always curious, it was fun. And the reason I ask that is because I was talking to one of my friends a few weeks ago, and he was telling me about how he syndicates money for apartment complexes.
Nice.
And he's also looking to build apartment complexes. And he came across one deal where I guess, it's a larger apartment complex. It was kind of sectioned off, right? So you'd have, maybe a few different parts of the apartment complex, right? And it just so happened that half of the apartment complex was in a flood zone and then half was not. So it was interesting hearing him describe how when he was, doing all his math and his homework, right, that those insurance costs, would affect his bottom line. He needed to know exactly what they would be.
Yeah, that's actually a crazy thing, because a lot of people, they do due diligence, but a lot of people don't do it in detail to catch that. So let's imagine he was running as if none of the property was in a flood zone. He probably was getting a lot of good quotes and good rates, but now that can ruin his bottom line. It's good that he found that during the due diligence period. I wonder how much more. I wonder if it's like 50% more or 20%.
Yeah, I'm curious as well. I didn't know all of the deal specifics, but just, kind of big picture, that's what he was telling me. And it kind of made me think, it makes you wonder, right? How many, what are they looking at? A certain number of units, a certain number of, acres, or however much space is in the flood zone or what's not,
Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm always kind of curious about those little smaller costs that you're kind of talking about having it financed the right way with the lender, making sure your title company is good, your contractor, your wholesaler, your taxes and insurance, right?
Yeah, you gotta have all that in check. I did have another question. Do you guys do insurance on like self storages or like mobile home parks?
So mobile home parks, I guess, let's see, mobile home parks would be just, I'm assuming like one of 20 or the entire thing, or
So I mean, they could be like about like 60 pads.
okay.
So like for instance, you could have a mobile home park that has 10 tenant owned homes, and most of the parks in the mobile home belong to the park. You need to insure those buildings in case like a hurricane or something, or a flood comes through or something, to protect your investment. But there's, in some cases, you can have one home park that every single home is a tenant-owned home, and therefore you just have the land and utilities. And that would be like financing dirt. I mean, no, insuring dirt. So there's, I feel like there's two different policies that would be for a mobile home park, depending on if the owner has owns the home, or if everything is a tenant-owned home.
Sure, understood. So to answer your question, I can do mobile homes. I mean, if it's like if you're buying an entire RV park, I wouldn't be able to do.
Oh yeah, that's what I meant, parks. Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't be able to do the entire thing, but I mean, if you have, generally a couple mobile homes or something like that, or a small portfolio, then yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But no, that's I love it. Is that kind of, and I'm curious as well, is that kind of where you're looking to gravitate your business, or what's next for you?
Yeah. So currently, right now, I've been doing fix and flips and new builds, and so I started offering a mentorship to a lot of friends would ask me like how to invest, because they were seeing the money that I was making from each deal. So I would charge them. I'd show them how to do it. But I'm sort of getting tired of just running around doing that. So I'm looking to move into the self storage and the mobile home park realm. Been underwriting a few deals. Also looking to network with other people who buy mobile home parks, as well as any wholesalers, um, or anybody who even has deals, even if they're direct to owner. But that, I feel like that's my next stage. I'm looking more for a cash flow, because eventually that's why I started real estate, for financial freedom. Like I said earlier this year, been helping a few people with mentorship and stuff like that. That you're chasing active money, active income, rather than getting passive income each month, which is basically what the money mustache method was all about, and mainly the main reason why I started real estate. Because real estate, you could get infinity returns if you have zero money into the deal. You get 20% return, 30% returns. But I noticed with saving and working to build your portfolio is a longer way to go. And real estate, you could get there like within a year or two. So that was the main reasons that started investing, and why I want monthly cash flow rather than just income from one house over and over.
Yeah, no, and it seems like a nice way to scale, right? To where, you can kind of gradually build towards something that's sustainable, as opposed to just kind of, being a flash in the pan, right?
Yeah, and with that said, it's like some people offered for me to help them GC their projects, or help them with work. it's once you have like a system down and a relationship with your contractors, you can quickly send them over there as if that rehab was yours. And the same type of work that you're doing for your own builds, you're doing for somebody else at like a upped charge. So I feel like you can help somebody else out, you can make money, you can help them out. And I feel like relationships is the only way you make it in this business. You must have relationships with people. When I first got started in Florida, I shook like an old guy's hand, and he was like, "Keep shaking hands." Basically, meaning keep networking and have relationships with others. And I feel that's where, in the past year or 2 years, I feel like that's where most of my money came from: partnering with people, just building relationships. You'd meet somebody at an event, they'll send you a deal the next day, and you buy it. Networking is the best way to go, and having relationships with the people you do business with.
Absolutely. And, I'm curious, maybe, someone's new to Texas, they're new to Dallas, Houston, wherever, maybe they have a W-2 job, they're looking to do real estate on the side, they don't know where to go. How do you meet the right people? How do you build that team?
Yeah, it's so typically the people that see that on my Instagram, Mood Investments, I post a lot, and I just get followers from all over. People like, "Hey, I'm moving from Atlanta down to Dallas, Texas. Can you talk with me?" So usually a lot of people reach out from my Instagram, and they ask me for help. So I help them to a certain degree. But then it gets to a point where they want to consume my time. We're already busy and already lives running around, going to stores and buying material, checking on projects. So usually I explain to them that, hey, if you want to learn this and also make money, I can mentor you, I can sell you a deal, I can show you the ropes, and you can do it yourself. Because if you're interested and you have the will and the desire to make a move to change your life and start investing in real estate, I feel like that's almost a unlimited return. So back in the days, I spent probably about 50,000 on two different mentors. These were just mentors in the different fix and flip realm. And with that, they've helped me make so much money that I would have never gotten any of that if I didn't know that information. And sometimes you're too, like, let's say doing new builds or doing fix and flips. Sometimes you're too scared to get in until you see somebody else do it. Back in the days, I was always scared of big rehabs. I was only spending like 25,000, 20,000 rehabs. Now I spend like 160, 150. Once you see that, your risk and your appetite for reward goes up, and that's when you want to continue and keep striving. So that's why I feel like paying for mentorships or paying for knowledge or paying to be in the right rooms really help anybody out. I mean, granted, if you could not afford it and you have to find another way, that's great. And it's hard to know who's going to be a good mentor, who show you the ropes. So I feel like, as well as mentorships, got to come naturally, just by reaching out and providing value to one another.
Absolutely. There's definitely a lot to be said for that, getting in the right room, and even like that old guy in Florida, just keep shaking hands, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, Justin. Well, is there anything you haven't said you'd really just like to hit home for our audience?
Yeah. I'd say follow me on Instagram,
Yeah.
NUDA Investments. I usually post all my content there. You could message me or anything. I'm always active on there. Or follow me on Facebook. My name is Justin Radcliffe on there, and I usually post my life stuff. Just eating out and having fun time, and showing projects. If anybody out there has any deals or wants to work with me or have any self-storage or mobile home parks or willing to partner or work on something, send me a message. My email is firstlandus@gmail.com, or it is we buy ARE allrealestate.com. You can contact me there.
All right, sounds good. And we'll make sure to have those links down in the show notes so people can contact you. And Justin, it's been a pleasure, getting to know a bit about your background, getting into the business, a lot of your experience with tear down new builds, and a lot of really interesting things, about deals and wholesaling and buying land and tearing down and adding value. It's been a real pleasure. So thanks so much.
Thank you, Aaron. I appreciate you sharing the message to the world, helping others out. Your podcast really helps a lot of people.
All right. I appreciate the kind words, Justin, and we'll talk to you next time.
All right. Thank you.